Hey guys, welcome back to more Entitled People stories. In this video, a neighbor Karen constantly patrolled my shared fence and calls the police when I am using my pool. She claimed that I am a creep. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. So the first one starts like this. A couple years ago, I hit it big in America after moving over here to start a business. I had done years of studying and finally built up the courage and financial backing to begin. My idea was a success in the US market immediately, and it's the reason that I am where I am today. I'm more than grateful for my current position. When I first moved here, I stayed in a small apartment in a relatively dodgy neighborhood and invested all of my money into my business. Let's just say I was not living the best life. When my business took off, I decided to move to a better home in a cute neighborhood I had heard some of my new friends speaking about. I would like to start this by saying that everyone other than this woman did not have an issue with me. In fact, most people were on my side, and once they learned my neighbor was lying, and even before then most had suspicions. I only heard a few rumors that this person did not like her new neighbor, which was of course me. I hadn't done anything at this point, so I was a little concerned that she already had a problem with me. After said 6 months though, my business was doing even better, and I decided to do some improvements to my home. I live in an HOA area, so I had to get permission first, which was easy enough as the president and members are rather fair in this area. Unlike some of the other horror stories I've heard. Anyway, the main project I was getting done was a pool, and this is where the trouble started. "I knew you would be causing issues," was the first thing my neighbor, who I shall refer to as Karen, said to me. "Sorry?" I asked, not having a clue who she was. "You cannot just start up any construction you want," she yelled. Ah yes, this was on day 1 of the pool construction. I nodded. Yeah, I saw that in the HOA rulebook. Don't worry, I got permission from them. "I don't believe you for 1 second. "Pardon me? You heard me. Don't act like you didn't. Your kind are just not to be trusted." And with that she stormed into her house, which is how I learned that she was my neighbor. I was so shocked by how she treated me and felt a horrible sense of dread that I was now living next to her. How could someone act so cold and calculated? A few days later, one of the HOA committee members showed up at my door. "Hey, I can see the pool construction is underway. We've had a complaint that you have an extension being built as well." "Oh well, that's strange, I definitely don't. Please feel free to come and have a look." While I lead the committee member around the back, I saw Karen smirking through her window. Said smirk quickly turned to a look of fury once she realized that they were not doing anything. "Hang on," Karen called after the committee woman. "Have you seen the color of his house? How is that allowed?" "Ma'am, it's the same color as yours." "Okay, and the branches?" "What branches?" The committee member sighed. Clearly, they were used to Karen's antics. "The branches from his tree keep falling across into my fence." Karen then proceeded to lead us all to the backyards where we share a fence. And indeed, one of my branches was slightly dangling over, so I reached towards it, moved it, and hearing the committee member chuckle. Karen was enraged and stormed back into her house, continuing to glare out of the window. Now let's move forward to after the pool is finished, and bear in mind that up until this point there was never ending problems from Karen. I wish I was kidding, but every day she had something new to say. I was taking a dip in my pool the very first time it was filled. It was lovely, refreshing, and just what I needed. I saw Karen out of the corner of my eye shaking her head through her window before she came storming out as usual. She was on what she calls her daily patrol to check the neighborhood for any possible HOA bylaw violations. "Hey," she shouted, which I ignored, hoping she would leave me in peace. It didn't work though. "I know you can hear me," she continued. "Stop flaunting your pool like that. You're just trying to make everyone else on the block feel bad. I find it so offensive what you're doing, flaunting around your money and wealth like this." She continued screaming and then decided to take things a step further and follow up with a stream of slurs towards my heritage. All of my peace and relaxation was gone in an instant. It's hard to comprehend the feeling when something like this happens. These slurs of Karen were degrading, humiliating, and belittling. "Get out of the pool," Karen yelled, which is how I realized she had since left her house and walked up to the fence. She then spat over the fence, landing her spit in the water before saying some more awful things. This is when I got out and suddenly started filming her. "Thank you, at least your people are good at taking orders," she chuffed, crossing her arms with a smirk. "Why are you saying all these things?" I asked. "Because they are true, and don't go all racism on me. Get a grip." She rolled her eyes. "What's your problem with me?" I demanded, getting annoyed at her careless attitude. "What's my problem? Oh, I don't know, maybe the fact that I have a creep for a neighbor?" "How on earth am I a creep?" I asked, shaking my head. "You're using your pool in the middle of the day. What is more creepy than that?" A lot of things? I laughed. Don't laugh at me, my concerns are completely valid when we have children in this street. There are no children anywhere near here or this pool. What sort of baseless accusations are these? This argument went back and forth for a long while. It was pointless and was only making us both more heated as it went on. Then she decided to claim, "The reflection from the pool is too strong. You better start only using this pool at night. For the rest of the time, keep that cover on it." I can use my pool whenever I want. I sighed. This argument was getting nowhere. Look, I'm on my own property and can use my own pool whenever I want. End of story. I'm gonna call the police, she yelled. For what? I could have banged my head into the wall. Indecent exposure, she yelled before picking up her phone and clicking a few buttons. You're just trying to intentionally provoke me. I'm wearing swimming trunks and have been the whole time. Okay, well, that might be what happened, but that's not what the cops will believe when I make up that you've been swimming naked. Ha! Again, not realizing that I'd been recording her and this whole thing as well. I heard her phone beginning to ring. I actually couldn't believe that she was going through with this, phoning the police, and for what? Just to be annoying to me? I still didn't know what she hoped to gain from all this. Yes, hello, I need help immediately. Get off me, my neighbor is attacking me. He is naked, please help, I'm so scared. He said he was just going for a swim, but really he was spying on me. Stop that. Please come quick, Karen yelled, and I could have laughed out loud at the way she was just standing there and pretending to be getting attacked. I internally rejoiced about the video I was recording. While she was on the phone, she carried on making her racist and derogatory remarks, probably not earning her many brownie points with whoever was on the other end, but anyway. Well, the police did arrive very fast, which makes sense considering what they thought was happening here. Yes, it is him, she screamed and pointed at me. I raised my hands and let them cuff me, trying to be as calm as possible. This is all a big misunderstanding, and I have a video of the whole interaction to prove it. I explained and then directed them to my phone, which I've subtly propped up nearby. While I was still handcuffed, one of the officers skimmed through the video and specifically hovered over the part where Karen was on the phone to the police, clearly lying about what had happened. Don't listen to him, that's just some AI video. You know what they are like, Karen yelled, attempting to jump over the fence to get to us. The police uncuffed me and apologized for the misunderstanding. Of course, I was not bothered because again, with the information they had, what else were they to do? You're being arrested for false accusations and lying to the police, one of the officers stated, quickly jumping the fence to Karen's side while she kicked and thrashed around. Get off me, this is assault! The officer ignored her while he continued to read out her rights. You cannot do this to me. Do you have any idea who I am? Karen continued and then made the fatal mistake of kicking the officer in the knee. Things escalated from there and she was promptly shoved into a police car and locked inside. Terribly sorry about all of this, and of course she will be dealt with, but would you like to press your own charges? The officer asked me. Yes, I would. Maybe this was petty of me, but I don't really think so. During this process of pressing charges against her, I released documents that detailed all the permissions the HOA had given me for the projects at my house, as well as letters and other things Karen had sent my way, cussing me out and citing all sorts of slurs. I wanted to paint the perfect picture of how she had been harassing me for the past months. All in all, she ended up getting 200 hours community service and a heavy warning from the police about making false accusations and wasting their time. I was slightly miffed that she still decided to live next door, and thus far she hasn't done anything further. For a cherry on top though, I may or may not have released the footage I had of her, which went rather viral. Her embarrassment seemed to keep her out of trouble for a while, and she was also forced to pay some fines by the HOA, mostly for wasting their time as well as tarnishing the area with her poor reputation. To be honest, I think they just wanted to fine her for being a nuisance since she moved here however many years ago. I got many supportive messages from people nearby saying they wished they knew something was going on as they would have helped step in. I thought that was lovely, and it's good to know if something was to happen again, I would not be alone. For the meantime, I can enjoy my pool and my thriving business. And the next one is titled, Neighbor's Shed Encroaches on Our Property, Preventing Us from Building Our House. And by the way, if you enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to like the video, post some star emojis in the comments, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much. So how do I get this finally removed after battling him for a year? My dad owns a vacant but desirable property in NY, neither of us currently reside there. He is passing the property along to me so I can build a house to live there. The property has been in my family since 1937. It took about $10,000 for him to get the title cleaned up with a lawyer. Last spring I had a survey done that showed the neighbor's shed encroaches on the property by about 7 feet. Setback is 12 feet, so needs to move around 19 feet back. The neighbor even said to my surveyor that my dad should just sell him the land. With this encroachment, my dad is unable to pass along a clean title to me, and without a clean title, I'm not able to secure a home building loan. I was going to work with the neighbor to amicably remove the shed, but he swiftly blocked my number and did not answer his door when I was in town last August. I looked into the town codes and the penalty for the violation is $100 a week. He also does not have a permit for this shed, which is necessary per the town's code of any structure over 120 square feet requiring a permit. Since I didn't live there, I got the city involved. The building inspector told him to remove the shed from our property. Neighbor ignored and refused for about 5 months, and then the building inspector had the city attorney write him a letter in January giving him 60 days to respond. The inspector has not given us a copy of the letter. We've requested it multiple times now, so I'm unsure of what all was said in the letter. I've also requested that the inspector enforces the penalties, as well as an injunction to padlock his shed for further use. Those requests were ignored as well. We did not hear back for about 90 days from the neighbor after the attorney's letter, but he agreed to move the shed. Woohoo, right? He then said we need to get surveyors to pin where he should move his shed so he doesn't have to do it twice. We have 3 different surveys of the property and there are pins at each corner. I called our surveyor and it would be $700 to mark where he should move the shed. I felt that I should not be responsible for getting his shed into compliance. This is his violation and I've been patiently waiting and delaying an entire year. I don't care if he's not within the full means of the 12 feet setback, he just needs it off my property to appease me at this point. Initially, I was willing to get the surveyor out again and pay for it, but my concern is that if we do that, he's still not going to move it in a timely manner and keep moving the goalposts for us too. Neighbor even said it would take 5 months after we pinned the property. I don't know why he thinks it would take 5 months to move the shed. I called around and got a quote from the shed movers, and one said they could do it next week for $575. I've got a lawyer in my back pocket who will be my last-ditch effort. It's expensive, a letter alone will be $1,500 and will take a long time, so I don't love that idea. He said we could do a revocable license for the bit of land, but I'm not giving the neighbor anything at this point. I want to put a driveway and definitely a fence there now too, so I will need that land. At this point I understand why my neighbor is being a jerk, he just wants to get away with whatever he can, but I cannot understand why the building inspector is letting him get away with everything. Why no penalties? Why no injunctions? He was very unhappy when I called the town clerk and asked for more information because the inspector does not answer mine. He's been so ineffective on this and it's having real repercussions for us. We are renting in a high cost of living area that we don't like and would love to have made progress this year to move ASAP. The neighbor should have racked up at least $4,400 in penalties so far and an additional $2,000 for the 5 months he wants to tack on. I feel like that would invoke actual pressure for him to move it, right? So what is my next step here to get this done ASAP? Is there someone above the inspector with the city that can help me with this? How can I get the town to actually enforce the movement of this shed and its penalties without being such wet noodles about it? Any ideas? And now we got an update to the story and it goes like this. So yeah, everyone wants me to burn this shed down, bulldoze it, saw it on the property line, or just move it myself. Well, this is in a small town in NY. I don't really want to cause waves with neighbors and I need the building inspector to not hate me when I build my house. I'm not gonna destroy his property, but I'm interested in moving it myself part. Is it legal for me to do that? Since he's been given so many choices and the town has ordered it to be moved, if I give him a notice, is that enough or do we need to have an attorney write a letter? My concern is that our neighbor seems like he's got money to mess with us and I don't want any repercussions falling on my dad. I'm afraid he would sue for some kind of damages or trespassing or something. I don't know, he's a jerk. Could we be held liable for this even if we give warning? What are my actual options here? And how to go about this with the lowest risk of repercussions? Update number 2. So a few weeks back I went to Home Depot and we bought a sawzall. We went to the neighbor's property in the middle of the night and not really. For all you burn it downers and sawzall it sayers, my attorney said by no means do anything like that. He said don't touch it in any way ever, so thank you to everyone for the solid and rational advice of talking to attorneys, and as frustrating as it is utilizing our government resources as recounted below. So basically I escalated this with the town and bothered them to no end. I got all the way up to the town supervisor and he was very frustrated on my behalf. I told him I've been dealing with this situation for a year, that the neighbor has been told to move the shed by the inspector and town attorney, that I've already had 3 surveys of the land to prove the encroachment, and that the property is properly demarcated with pins. He asked why the building inspector was having yet another surveyor go out there and said he would just have someone measure where the shed needs to be moved using the survey. He says he will personally get involved in this and will give neighbor 1 week to get his shed moved. I get a call back with him later that day with a junior building inspector taking direction from the senior inspector while he's out of town on the line, and womp womp, he totally changes his tune. He said I have to get a surveyor to go out there to pin the property line again, but specifically next to the shed. They could never answer me why it was my responsibility to pin a specific spot on my property for a shed that shouldn't exist there in the first place, solely for the benefit of the neighbor figuring out how far back to move his shed to get it into compliance. I'm fuming now, and I also figured out that the senior inspector forgot that I had sent him the 3rd survey showing the encroachment in the spring, which should have began the penalty violations. He also didn't provide that to the neighbor who needed it and had been asking for it. He just thought I didn't provide the survey. Even the junior inspector was embarrassed and frustrated for his lack of help and thoroughness with my case. At this point, I'm still adamant that I don't want to get another surveyor out there. It will just take too long. I talked to a lawyer that would be less expensive than a surveyor and pretty much said that this was a slam dunk win that would enforce the removal ASAP. We are still trying to tread lightly though, so we don't piss off my future homes building inspector too much with the threats of using an attorney, but we desperately need results here. My dad is an engineer and comes up with an idea that we present to the junior inspector. We will use the shed as the property line pin to mark the setback for the neighbor. The shed is shown on the survey and we can see where the property line crosses through the shed. We just need to measure and mark those places IRL. It's stupidly simple and similar to an idea I mentioned months ago about measuring the setback from the shed, but they approved it. I used the survey's CAD files to set up the measurements for where to pin the property line and 6-foot setback lines. In my last post, the setbacks were 12 foot, but changed at some point that month. Another piece of important information that the building inspector forgot to mention to me. When my dad and husband went out to go mark the shed using line of sight, they met up with the neighbor and he was so unbelievably nice. Mind you, we've all been blocked, ignored, had our no trespassing signs taken down, and then been told in the past that we should just sell him the property. And now he is making friends with my husband, giving him a tour of his house, talking Scotch, sharing contractor info with him, etc. I'm just baffled hearing this and I don't trust it, but welcome it for the moment. Then my husband tells me the neighbor's wife is rude to him and pissed that we didn't get the additional survey, did not like that we were doing it this way, etc. And the neighbor hushes her and she goes off to pout the rest of the day. My theory is that maybe the wife is the one doing all the blocking and snagging this up. The neighbor apparently had a heart attack earlier this year, so I wonder if she took over his communications or something. When this first started last year, they mentioned that they tried to buy our property so their son could live on it. Apparently it's just her son, his stepson. I think she drove some of this conflict actually, and he may be giving it up or just changing his tune after his heart attack. Ever since then, he's been friendly towards us, which I'm relieved about. So after the pinning of the property line and marking the 6-foot setback, the building inspector approved our work and then gave the neighbor another month to get this scheduled with a mover and finally moved. After about a month and a half, I did not hear from the inspector, so we gave the town a call. It had been moved. We went forward with our final survey to confirm that our land is clear of any encroachments. It is cleared now, but the neighbor only moved the 3.6 foot of the property line, short of the 6-foot setback. What the hell? I got a letter today from the building inspector saying he passed it and the case is officially closed. I absolutely don't care that it's only 3.6 foot back instead of 6. I'm just glad that he's off my land and can now move forward. But seriously, I don't know how this got approved, but I'm in awe of the incompetence of the inspector. I guess I will just have to see what all I can get away with too. Anyway, that's my shed saga. Thanks for reading. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow. Have you ever found yourself grasping for straws with such stupidity in today's world? Well, I have. Let me tell you a little story about how my local hellions down at the HOA treated me unfairly. It all started with me having a motorcycle, a souped-up Harley to be exact. Now, I'm no stranger to these pesky motorcycles that make a racket every time you start them. My bike was built for toughness and someone could hear it a mile away every time it started. I suppose that was what set off my HOA when one morning I went outside to clean it and make sure it was running good after I had just taken it across the country on a bike tour with some friends. My fiancé was inside the house making dinner when I started the motorcycle. Everything was quiet and calm here on the Western Front. Where we lived was a nice peaceful neighborhood full of happy families and young couples trying to get started and live a simple life outside of LA. So I go and start my bike and rev the engine a little bit, hoping it would do a little kickback. The more the better. I start revving it some more and smoke starts coming out of it. Good. That's what you want to see with a new Harley. It shows that the engine is working well and the exhaust is up to par. So far so good. The problem was that at the time I did not know that my HOA took a keen interest in my loud bike. On top of that, it turns out that motorcycles, according to them, were prohibited on the premises of the HOA. As I was revving my engine more, my fiancée Darla came out and asked if I wanted a beer. "You got time for that damn thing, but no time for me." I could see the frustration in her eyes. I knew that she loved my hobbies just as much as me though. Then again, I love to show it off too. I usually parked it in the driveway so that everyone could see my new bike and take a gander at it. I even had it custom built with new lights attached and LED flashing strobes underneath the carriage so that every time I made a right turn it would spit out some cool looking clubby vibes. Hell yeah, I said as I winked at her. It was my time to shine. This was my bike, my second love. Or maybe his first, that's how it goes for some motorcycle riders. Anyway, so naturally when someone tries to come and take that away from me, I sure am gonna raise a little hell. I was out there cleaning my bike when I see a couple of cars pulling up to my driveway. I'm thinking to myself, was my bike too loud for them? Sure enough, two bozos get out of their SUVs wearing khaki pants and polos. Oh no, here we go. It turns out that they were from the HOA. They take their shades off and start grumbling. One of them even covered their ears. I was suspecting that maybe my bike was too noisy, but F them, this is America for crying out loud. I can crank up the music and rev my engine as loud as I want. But these cronies come knocking, wanting some action. And damn guys, this dude is living the American dream. Anyway, let me tell you, they got what was coming. If there's any lesson to be learned, know this much, that most people will stop at nothing to take away your dream and livelihood for the almighty dollar. But today I was not having it. Nope. When these cronies showed up on my doorstep, they both looked at me in disgust and started rambling off some crazy crap about this and that, and how I was not able to park my bike in my own driveway, for crying out loud. Then they tell me that if I don't dispose of my bike or park it off the premises, I would be fined. And it turns out they did fine me a lot of money. When I got the letter, Darla looked at me in disgust too. "Dean, where are we gonna get the money for this?" she hammered at me. "I'm gonna find a way," I yelled back. When these two HOA freaks were staring at me, eyeing me up like a creep in a playground, I started to get queasy. That feeling has never left me to this day. In fact, what I'm about to tell you may shock you. It gets worse. The next day I get a phone call from one of the cronies. His name was Justin. He was the one in charge of this whole damn scheme to begin with. It turns out that they forged documents saying that, per usual policy, no one is allowed to have a motorcycle on HOA premises. And wow, Ripe stars, I would say that's clearly a human rights violation. No motorcycles allowed? That clearly goes too far for me. Anyway, well damn, last time I checked this was my property, not some scummy HOA property. So I went down to the HOA office to see if I could talk to a higher up, and guess who the higher up was? The other crony who got out of the SUV. His name was Vic. I talked to them both and had a favorable disagreement. After going non-stop for 2 hours in their rinky-dink office that smelled like cat litter, they threatened to sue me. It only gets worse from here. After returning home, I talked with Darla. It looks like the HOA might sue us for the motorcycle in the driveway. Can you believe that BS? She looked at me in disbelief and started crying. I told you to get rid of that thing a long time ago. That's not right that they're doing that. Shouldn't we do something? Maybe go to the police? I looked at her startled and ashamed. No, I have a lawyer friend. Remember Nate? She looked at me again, and this time with admiration and hope. You're not talking about that gun-toting redneck, are you? I sighed. Yep. And I'm sure he can get the job done if you know what I mean. The next day I call Nate and hear a knock on the door. It's Vic and Justin again, this time with a heavy file folder of a bunch of paperwork. They served me the damn papers. I tossed the folder on the ground and started screaming, "Get off my property and stop harassing me about my bike. It just sits there, it does no harm to you. Lay off." I slam the door on their face and they leave. The next day, more phone calls. And the next month, even more. Months go by and my mailbox is filled with letters and court documents, and on top of it all, I got sued by them. It sucked, and that's when Nate and I stepped up our game to pull off one of the great American heists known to mankind, a la Sledgehammer style, minus the guns. These cronies were going down. Nate and I appeared in court and countersued them. When they claimed my bike was making too much noise and that I didn't read the fine print on the HOA policies, Nate pulled back the curtain on some long-forgotten hidden agendas that these cronies were pushing for. It turns out they had done numerous suits in court to previous owners, everything ranging from no mailboxes to no porch lights on after midnight. They tried to rewrite their homeowner association bylaws and slide it under the table so they could nickel and dime the very people that paid their measly salary anyway. And here I was, getting sued for a whopping $270,000. And I spent a lot of money over the course of 2 years just to keep these bullies at bay. After all was said and done, we took Vic and Justin to court and reamed their asses, and I won. I got back the money I spent on the legal battle, and as well as other legal fees to the fine tune of $270,000. Right back at you. After the court trial and other legal mumbo-jumbo between the HOA, the police came out and investigated the HOA office. It turned out that they created fake policies and documents just to prove their innocence. Honestly, these guys were the scum of the earth. I bet you can guess what I did with the settlement money, huh? Well, after the case went viral on Facebook, I set up a Kickstarter for our new HOA that was set up after the police investigation. The new Kickstarter pledge was $270,000. We ended up making way more than that after everyone in the neighborhood and their rich friends heard of the terrible news. Nobody else wanted to be a victim, so we got help on all sides. It turns out more people in the community were victims of this fraudulent nonsense, and we brought them to justice. We donated all the money earned from the campaign to the other homeowners that were affected by the HOA abuse. We even threw in a new motorcycle to a family without a car. For anyone who thinks that justice cannot be done in today's world, well, think again. My wife Darla is now the proud owner of her own Harley, and we are planning our first bike trip across the country next year. And by the way, if anybody ever tries to F with us again, I guarantee you that they will be left in the dust with their undies tied over their head. And yeah, Ripe stars, I'm so happy that this story turned out positive for OP. As a fellow motorcycle fanatic, I very much appreciate this story. Although I have to say, I'm not one of these people that revs his motorcycle in the neighborhood. I'm very careful to not really annoy people with my motorcycle because it's already loud enough and I don't need to rev it or anything. By the way, if you yourself ride a motorcycle, let me know which one you have. I recently bought a Yamaha MT-10 and so far I'm very happy with it. I don't think I ever need a new one again. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.